Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lightworkers Secrets to Success. I'm here with my friends, Adam, Pamela, and Amanda. And we're going to have a little conversation this evening about something that is a little far out there, but to us it's not because we're far out anyway. And we all have different experiences relating to um, life off of planet Earth, like extraterrestrials, maybe experiences with UFOs, and things that have happened to us that have opened up our thought that maybe we're not the only entities living in the universe. There could be all kinds of life out there. So, we're going to just share some of the things that we've come across in our own personal journeys. And maybe you've had an experience too. I know a lot of people see things or have experiences that many times they can't share with other people because they either don't believe them or it's just too far out. And I'll start it off because I did have an experience when I was a teenager. I've written about this in my book, Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant, and I did a video on it once too. I was sitting in a car in Massachusetts looking out at the ocean, and these three flying saucers came in from out in the direction of Martha's Vineyard and just flew right up to the edge of the land where I was sitting in a car on a beautiful, clear autumn evening. And it was as clear as a bell outside. I don't think there were any clouds. And as they got closer and closer and closer, I could see each one was a saucer with a dome on top. They made no noise. They were blinking, and they flew together in a like a V formation, and they could do those right angle turns like nobody can explain because I don't think we have any known equipment. We may now because we've moved along in aviation, but back in the 60s, nobody knew of anything that could do these kinds of right angle turns. And they weren't helicopters, they weren't small airplanes, they were perfect UFOs. And it opened my thought. Many times people have these experiences, and it's like a spiritual experience because your thought opens up and you begin to understand that there are a lot of mysteries that in the universe that maybe we haven't figured out, and it makes us more open-minded. Well, that's what it did for me. Plus, it motivated me to become a flight attendant so I could interview pilots and find out what they knew. And over the course of my career, I did interview a lot of pilots, heard a lot of little stories, but never any real exact definitions of where they came from. But I did know about Area 51. I knew that we had a secret military base. Um, and I knew that there were secrets because pilots weren't allowed to talk about seeing UFOs. They never reported them in the 60s or in the 70s, or they could lose their job. So when I did interview them sometimes in the cockpit and ask them if they'd seen anything, many of them would just freeze up because they didn't want to talk about it. It was a very dangerous topic in aviation, which kind of blows my mind when I think about it because it's just another example of censorship and not being able to express yourself without bad repercussions. This has always been going on, I guess. So it's just another way to control people. But being a curious person, I did ask a lot of questions. And then as I moved along, I would interview other people to see if they had ever seen anything or had experiences. One time I was talking to a flight attendant and she said, "Oh, my family and I were camping out in Utah when I was a little girl. And we woke up early in the morning and we saw this craft that looked like a cigar shaped thing with no wings, just move behind the mountain." And she never forgot that. So there's definitely a lot of things out there. I will also say that because I've experienced spontaneous healings, I know a lot of people meet these light beings. And one night I had a very, very lucid dream. And I saw a light being. He was sitting across from me, and all I could see was light instead of a head. I didn't see any face. I just saw light. And he told me he was my eternal husband. and he's always with me, and he's always been with me, and he will never leave me. I can still remember to this moment the words he said, and this was many years ago, but it gave me a great deal of comfort and a sense of peace. And even sometimes when I get a little bored or distressed, I try to communicate with him, because I do feel like none of us are alone. I mean, who knows? There could be light beings all over the place that we just can't see with our five senses, our human eyes. But I know there are people that do contact extraterrestrials. And I've been to Mount Shasta. I know that there are an awful lot of stories out there about people who live underneath the ground in what they call Telos. It's a hidden city underneath Mount Shasta that could be a home for Pleiadians. And I've always been fascinated by stories of extraterrestrials. When I went to Crestone, Colorado one time, I met with this couple who lived there. She had a picture of an alien with the big eyes and blonde hair. And I said, oh, wow, that's an interesting picture. And she said, well, it reminds me of my alien children. She said that she had been impregnated a few times, and she had alien children that she did not see in the three-dimensional world, but she knew they were alive. They communicated telepathically. And she wasn't any kind of a crazy woman. She was very grounded, but it was a very real experience she'd had. So there's all kinds of stories about extraterrestrials. And it's interesting now that I know someone who watches the mainstream news. I don't watch it, but he was telling me the story about how there was a naval officer on yesterday or very recently, and the government is getting everybody all worked up. Oh, they have these machines that are moving so fast. There is no country on planet Earth that could duplicate this, and they have to be dangerous. Wernher von Braun told people when he was heading NASA that the plan is to create a one world government and, kind of control the humans on the planet. I mean, there are people that get together and have these secret meetings, and that's been kind of one of the goals for mankind, for the people that like to control things. And the plan was to, use terrorism, pandemic, and then there will be alien invasion. And I get a very strong sense that they are starting to gear us up for a possible holographic alien invasion. It wouldn't even have to be real machines. But I did meet a woman one time whose husband was CEO of Lockheed Martin, which is one of those airplane companies that supposedly has reverse engineered UFOs that have crashed. And she took my seminar on the island of Nantucket for 2 days. And she told me that those UFOs I saw in the 60s may have been reverse engineered by our government, because she knew for a fact from her marriage to this particular person that, yes, the government has been able to reverse engineer UFOs. So when you see them, it may be ours or it may be extraterrestrial. I'm not sure where they're coming from. So that's my story.
Yeah, I think, I've heard that before about the alien reverse technology, and that whole project is called Project Blue Book. I recently, if you follow what they had done since World War II, they had laid out a very strategic plan to have a Cold War. It was 4 stages. First stage was have a Cold War with Russia for as long as possible. And so obviously in the 80s that ended. Their next thing in the 90s was to have a war in the Middle East and create some kind of weapons of mass destruction that was never there. And that was stage 2. Stage 3 was supposed to create some crazy man dictator in Southeast Asia and that wants to have a nuclear war, and that was supposed to be, Kim Jong-un, which obviously didn't happen because President Trump came in, and the two nations were good, and even though the news reported something different. And stage 4 was create a alien spacecraft attack on major cities around the world, pretending like it's aliens attacking planet Earth, and really it's just other humans flying UFOs. Now, the reason that they aren't doing that anymore and they scrapped that project is one thing that they were fearful of is that it would wake up too many people. And so they won't actually do that. And they won't even stage a holographic fake alien invasion because of that reason. So I'm pretty sure they scrapped that entire project because they weren't sure on what was going to happen and the outcome of what was going to happen. So, but interesting stuff.
Yeah, well, there are more sightings right now, supposedly. There's just an awful lot of them on the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific and all over the world. There's many, many sightings, especially around military vessels. I'm hearing they seem to be floating around, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure if it's the reason that the cabal is falling and their stranglehold on everything is they just can't. There's so many moving parts with it that they just can't control it like they used to. Or there is a major shift about to happen, and that shift, once it does happen, these aliens are here to help, and to help us transition for the people that are ready to move into the fifth dimension. So I'm not really sure on why we're seeing more. If it's just they're trying to get it more into the public.
Well, I think that's something for people to be aware of. If aliens, which have been seen for hundreds, if not thousands of years, I mean, we have ancient paintings that show little spacecraft in them and Egyptian hieroglyphics. So they've probably been around forever. But the news media will try to frighten people about them. They're talking about how they could be so dangerous to our security because they can do things that our technology can't do. I don't feel that way at all. I feel like if they wanted to wipe us out, they could have done it a long time ago if they've got that kind of technology. So I always think of them as friendly, loving, and wanting to help us. And I'll tell you, when I see a picture of an alien with the big eyes, or even the little kind of heart-shaped face with no mouth, I feel like I'm looking at my friends. I like to look at pictures of aliens. For some reason, I find them very comforting. But yeah, so that's interesting, Adam. Have you had a personal alien experience?
Well, I'm sure I have when I was much younger. I don't really recall anything. I'm more so with ghosts or spirits that I felt. So I've had many of those. Whether that was an ET or not, it's hard to really tell. But I do know, when was that? That would have been late 2020 at some point, October, November-ish, somewhere around there. I had purchased the app by Dr. Stephen Greer, the fifth contact, or what's it called? Anyways, I had purchased this app, and CE5 contact. Very interesting stuff. He actually gives you and now that it's getting warmer out, I'll probably actually go out and do it. He actually gives you instructions on how to summon, or how to not summon, but how to make contact with aliens. And so I did it in meditation the one day, and all I gotta say is that my body started vibrating at a certain rate, and I can't even describe it, but I know that I was listening to that. I know that I had requested it. I gave him exact instructions on where I was located, and something changed. And pitch dark out, very, very early in the morning, like 4 a.m. And I could feel like, you know, when your eyes are closed and you can feel when someone turns on the light or someone turns off the light. Well, no one turned on the light. There was no sunshine out, but yet the room got much, much brighter because I could see it in my eyes. My eyes were flickering like really fast. And so that's the only thing I can really say that that I did and I called and experienced. But that's as far as I really go with it.
Interesting. Well, I think you're probably going to be a contact too.
Probably.
Eventually. Yeah.
Probably. Amanda or Pamela, do you guys have anything, any kind of contacts?
I'll just piggyback what you said, Adam, because you had told me about that app and you had made contacts. So I did the same thing. And just randomly, sometimes I'll hear like little clicking noises and I know that someone is trying to make contact with me, and or I'll hear certain noises in my ear. Usually it's the left ear if it's not an ancestor or a guide. So if it's in the left ear, it's something else. And usually it's either really late at night or really early in the morning when I'm either just about to go to bed or I'm just kind of like waking up. So, and I'm trying to think if I've had any other kind of experiences with that. I've always been very intrigued. The topic has always been very intriguing to me. I had a grandpa that worked at Lockheed Martin. So, and I don't know if he was a part of any of that stuff, but that was down in Burbank, California. And unfortunately, I can't ask him because he died in a tragic car accident back in the early 90s. So but he worked there for quite a while. The other thing, I mainly come across ancestors and demons and some other probably ETs that maybe I'm just not aware of yet, but I have been kind of digging into that information with some friends of mine. Because some of them can interfere in your everyday life and they can cause a lot of problems, and a lot of them can cause like technology problems, especially if you're trying to do something positive. They'll get right in there and try to give you your internet will go down, or you can't nobody can call you. Yesterday we were having problems, like nobody could call me, I couldn't get on the internet, and I mean I wasn't supposed to be doing anything important, but they just randomly do things like that. And let's see what else. Learning, one of the things I wanted to do was put together like a little course on the different ETs and what they're all about and what they're here for, because I think each race has its own mission and agenda. So I think it'd be really cool to have kind of like a one-stop shop where people like us, who didn't know but are learning, we could teach other people, because it's all very fascinating information. I think it's really important for everybody to know too. The more you know, then you're not as scared about the topic. And I know, like you said, Rebecca. Oops, sorry. I had a phone call coming in. But as you said, Rebecca, there could be some false flags and there could be some holographic things that are coming our way. And I think it is kind of a fear-based thing. So for us not to be afraid and scared, I think it'd be really important for us to do something like that. So I love this topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. I mean, if you listen to what Einstein said, and if you believe what Einstein said, he said the universe is a friendly place. Right. So if you honestly think that ETs have traveled, whether you believe they traveled thousands of miles or not, to come here, they could wipe us out at any time. They're far more advanced than we are. So they're here to help us transition. And if you can grasp that piece of information and you accept it and believe it, then definitely, you have nothing to fear, because these ET races, and there are more than one ET race. I mean, I've seen up to 25 or 30, I think, different races. It's quite interesting if you want to dig into the subject. But there are all sorts of different kinds. But, we all know kind of the main ones, which are the Greys, the Reptilians. We know the Pleiadians and Arcturians, the Nordics. Those are some of the, more popular ones. But there are other ones that are out there. And a lot of them are friendly. They're here to help, and they're here to, progress the universe and creation and all that sort of good stuff. So it's a very, very interesting topic. If you're interested in to dig into it, I'd highly recommend doing it. Pamela, how about you? What kind of ET stuff do you have?
Well, for me, I don't even remember when I kind of put the two together, but growing up, my grandmother they would tell stories of the star people or our star sisters and brothers, and it was the same. That was their definition. And I know there's places I've gone to that the energy is just amazing. Like one of the places, in fact, it was used for a movie, and I can't remember the name of the movie. And in the Native American, the different tribes, they call it Bear's Teepee or Bear's Mountain, but the name that most people know it by is actually Devil's Mountain. And I'm not even sure how that happened, but we actually were there a couple of years ago. We went, and the energy is just phenomenal. And they still have sun dances, and they still do the prayers and the vision quest and stuff using that. So it's really amazing. But we grew up being taught about the star children and the stars, our sisters and brothers who were star people, and how they always came with gifts for us. So it was never and it didn't, I never had personal experience, but there was never this sense of fear for us. It was always, these are, whenever they've been around, they've always brought us gifts and special teachings and stories. And that when they would leave, they were a sense of loss and loneliness, because it's like their energy was so vibrant and I guess so high frequency compared to most humans that you felt physically would feel that sense of loneliness and loss. But it was never something to be afraid of, and it was always something to be looking. I guess it'd almost be equivalent to like how a lot of the Caucasian look for Santa Claus to come, right? It's that wanting that, and a lot of different cultures have different things they look towards. But the having the star children, our star brothers and sisters, come and talk to us and share their special knowledge, it was just amazing. It kind of reminds me of that. I know there's one short video that you shared before, Adam, with the two girls. They're talking about, the one went back to, and it was that kind of thing because they were here to help, So that's kind of been mine. Now, kind of like you, I've had experiences with ghosts or whatever word you want to use. My mom grew up in houses where they were. I've had homes that we've lived in that had the spirits in them, but it was never as a fearful thing. I do remember a story that my grandmother told because they lived. My mom's family were Cherokee and Cheyenne, and a lot of times they did the migrant farming or the ranching, and they lived in this one place for a while that had been a like a way station on the Pony Express, a stagecoach route, one of those kind of places. And they talked about how, I can remember them talking about how they sometimes they'd be woken up with the sound of like knocking on the door or running across the steps, and then like the plunk of arrows hitting the wood. But there would never be anybody there if they opened the door. But there was that, they could hear the resonance of the sound and stuff. And my grandmother, one day, she got used to that. She got to think, but one day she went into their pantry and it was just a sheet covering it. And she pulled the sheet back and there was a warrior in full war dress. And she was like, okay, that's it. I'm not staying here anymore. And she was native. I mean, it was like, but it was like, yeah, no, we're on their trip. Guess home, we're not staying here. And so she had my family move and stuff. But, those kind of things, they were never something to be afraid of. And so I never saw anything as far as like thinking of extraterrestrials as being something to be afraid of either. You know, it's just always been one of those that they're here to help. And I think I've shared with you, we somebody we had heard a story that back when they were doing the nuclear bombs, how there was some that were set out and these lights came out of the sky and totally dissolved those bombs and wouldn't let them use them. You know, but they weren't allowed to talk about it for years. But I just feel like they're overall, they're there to help. And they're just waiting for us to be ready to accept the help, right? It's kind of like the abundance in the universe. Are you ready for it? Are you open to receiving? And I think that's kind of where the things are at right now. It's like, are we ready to openly receive and not automatically want to go to the defense and we have to kill them because they're dangerous type thing, you know?
Yeah, many people have gotten warnings from them, I think. There was a psychologist at Harvard University, John Mack, who interviewed a lot of abductees. And he almost lost his ability to be a professor at Harvard because they thought he was a little too far out there. But he persisted, and he went to Zimbabwe, where these school children saw a craft land. When they were school children, these alien beings got out of the craft and spoke to the children telepathically and basically gave them a warning that planet Earth needed to get its act together because it wasn't looking too good. And I even saw an interview with some of them as adults because this happened many years ago. And they said it was something they would never forget. It was real. Yeah. So that's an interesting story, though, about your grandmother and the Indian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, too, is because a lot of our traditions on my on mom's side and stuff, it's oral. So much of what's shared is oral,
Mm.
you know, and so there's not that. And when you're told a story, it's really important that you know the story, right? So um, there's a lot of these different legends and stuff that are out there that people now they say, well, that's just a make believe or it's a fairy tale or it's a legend, but there's truth to everything, and so a lot of the stuff that comes down from stories I remember, they were told repeatedly over and over and over again, and they weren't changed up. So it didn't matter if you heard it from one person or another person in the tribe. The story was always the same. So it wasn't like the telephone game where things changed up. It was very important that you learned your traditions. And so you didn't get to make them up. There's a really cool movie out that covers some of that. I'll have to see if I can find the name of it. Um, but it talks about the oral story traditions. And in that movie, he actually gives you some of the traditions and stuff. But it's really interesting because the other thing is like when you're dealing with the most of the, I don't know all, but I know a lot of the Native American tribes, they want to know who's your lineage, who is your mother,
Mm.
right? Who's your people, who's your mom, because that puts you in the line of where what were you taught and who were you, how do you know? And it's a really interesting and just being in tune with the nature. um you just pick up stuff if you're really paying attention, and when you're raised to pay attention, you just see a lot more. Like we see a lot, I think you guys do too. You see beauty where a lot of people don't see beauty, right? Because we take time to pay attention and we look at stuff. But a lot of people are, so they're just kind of like whatever, it's just a flower, or it's just this, or it's just a sky, right? But we see beauty in sunsets. We see beauty in the way, sometimes it looks, there's little wood villages or whatever. They're just the way the things have grown up, or this and that, and the fairies and stuff that are there and making do on the land. So it's just an interesting perspective, I think, that a lot of people have lost touch with. And I think that I really believe that as people get more in touch with themselves,
Mm.
right, they're going to get more in touch with nature. And that's going to make a huge difference in waking them up as well.
Well, another thing we hear about people that are contacted or see, some people see UFOs practically every day. And I listen to these people, talking about it, and they claim your it's your frequency. They're very tuned into certain people, but not everybody can see these things. Just like not everybody can see a fairy or an elk.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Mm,
Makes a difference.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you're talking about that, Pamela, because I mean, if you look at all of the ancient traditions, all of the ancient, like the Mayans, and you look at all of them, they all talk about the same thing. The Aborigines down in Australia, they all talk about the star people came down and showed us and guided us. Everything refers to the star people. And, it's an interesting point that you just brought up. I've often wondered why, when a man and a woman get married, why is it necessary for the woman always to take the man's name? I don't really know the answer to it, but I'm just wondering from what you had just said, is that it's so important to know the mother's lineage and not the father. And I'm wondering if they were trying to, and when I say they, we all know who the R's are when we say the R's, if they were trying to break that because it's such a powerful, energetic bond. And that was their way of trying to break it down and trying to get it out of the human DNA and into there. I just could never really grasp that information on why it was like that. And I don't think it's fair for women to have to change their last name. Like, if they want to, I'm totally fine with it, but I mean, I don't get why they need to. So anyways, I just had that thought.
Well, it was based on property because when the they married, it was basically the woman was becoming the property of the man.
Yeah, in the 1800s, women were chattel. They couldn't own property or do a
Hmm.
lot of things.
Yeah, but like I'm wondering if they were trying to break it down because of that reason, because the
Yeah,
feminine energy is so strong and
yeah.
there's such a connection there. I'm wondering if that's why they said this is the new law and they were trying to break it down. It's just that's what I'm kind of feeling is why they did it.
Well, now the feminine is rising again, which you're right. I mean, it's been the masculine energy that's been controlling most of the planet for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
interesting. Well, this was great. What good stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if any of you have some good stories and want to share them, definitely put them in the comments down below, and we're happy to share them. And if you actually want to come on and do a live interview with us and tell us your story, we would love that too. So just get in touch with us, and we're happy to share and get to know each of our viewers a little bit better.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Definitely.
So I hope you liked this YouTube video, and if you did, make sure you like it and subscribe to our channel. We would appreciate it. If you want to hear anything particular, any kind of subject, I mean, we're quite well versed in a lot of different subjects, so we would love to have that discussion. Please just leave us a comment below, and we'll be sure to get that on our next live YouTube that we do. All right, so everyone have a good night, good weekend, and we'll see you all.